All right. Let's see here. Got it. Okay. Got to get started right away. The last recording I made, I sat there and dilly-dallied, and it was all silly. Okay. How are we doing? Yes? All have a good break? Yes? Glad to see everybody back. I think we have a couple of people that are missing, but that is maybe expected. We had some flight cancellations and whatnot. All right, I'm going to hand this around for signing in. Today we want to check in with everybody's case, see if there's been any new news that's developed. How was your Thanksgiving? Did you guys talk with your family members at all about anything related to school, Indigenous rights, anything like that? No. Yes, no. All right, did you guys watch the news? No. Great, you had a good rest, right? All the way. Absolutely. Good. Anything else notable for your Thanksgiving holiday? Not that we know. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at a couple of things that came up. Oh, gosh. Well, that's silly. Let's see if I can. Okay, there we go. Here's a piece that came from Truth Out. How many people know Truth Out? A little bit, right? They do a fair amount of liberal kind of educational pieces. Here's one. It says, enough Thanksgiving myths. Schools should teach Indigenous history. I like this. I thought this was great. Like, really, I could feel that. Enough of that bunch of junk that, I don't know about you, but my daughter likes Garfield and what's it called? Charlie Brown series. And watching those, it just absolutely doesn't give you the correct history at all. So we really need to start thinking about approaching this from the appropriate history, right? Okay, so that was a nice welcome piece issued on the 22nd, just before Thanksgiving. So to spur families on talking about the truthful history of our experience. Okay. Thought this was pretty interesting. Stunned, actually, when I read this. This is a piece that comes to us from Fox News, so it's far right. Hence, maybe it showed up that way, but I found it extraordinary. Law banning female genital mutilation is ruled as unconstitutional, and Michigan doctors are cleared of charges. So we have some Michigan doctors that have conducted female circumcision in our country, and we made a law against it, and now we've decided that that law is unconstitutional, and in the process, we're clearing any doctors that have been taken to court for it. That's kind of a state level, right? Interesting. So how many people find this surprising? Okay, yeah, kind of saw that this was happening in England maybe 5 years ago, right? We were having this discussion about Sharia law and whether or not it should be here or not, right? So now apparently that British discussion is on our shores and we're having it here too. So that's one piece of news. Here's a lovely piece, but first I want to share with you a little dance that was, oops, this is through my Facebook, so try and ignore this. And this is for those of you that are working on the case of the missing women, right? Oh, you can't hear the sound. Hold on. No, the sound's not very good. Anybody know who Cassidy is? Who are our two that are working on the missing women, right? One, and the other one's not here, right? Okay. So do you remember who Cassidy was? One of the missing women, right? So this is an event that they did a couple days ago, and I really like that they have the little girl. It says so much to me, right? Because it's about women and she's the future, and imagining what's happened to those missing women happening to a little girl is just horrific, right? So it kind of brings that message home. Yeah. Okay, so that's a nice piece that we got. And that was shared on Facebook. Another nice piece that I don't know where else this might have been shared. I'm thinking that it was shared somewhere else as well, maybe on a YouTube thing. But this is a 16-minute piece, and if you're up for it, I'd like us to take a look at it. Are we up for it? Yeah? Okay. Let's take a look at this one.
It's Canada's secret shame, an epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Indigenous women face a murder rate 6 times the national average. Every time you come out to this river, do you wonder if you'll recover her body?
You come across remains and you don't know if they're human or not, or if they're your sister.
The UN has censured Canada for its ongoing failure to address the crisis.
The march is to send a message to the men who prey on them that they're being watched by the community.
We see what's going on, and we don't believe that our people deserve it.
These guys do not discriminate. They go after anybody and everybody.
Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is taking action.
Those touched by this national tragedy have waited long enough.
But after years of failure on the part of the police and the government, many here question if it could possibly go far enough to bring justice for the families and keep women safe.
It flashed through my mind that it could be a body that we were trying to pull up.
Anybody seen this
We're
already?
in Winnipeg, which is one of the most violent
Yeah, you
cities in Canada. It also has the largest urban Indigenous population in North America. And more Indigenous women have gone missing or been murdered here than anywhere else in the country.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or
Raven, I think that you
RCMP,
want to write
says
down
nearly
who did this. Yeah, good.
1,200 Indigenous women have gone missing or been murdered across Canada since 1980. But advocacy groups put the figure far higher at about 4,000 women. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's predecessor, Stephen Harper, largely dismissed the issue. Then, in 2015, Trudeau announced the creation of a 2-year national inquiry to examine the epidemic as part of what he called a total renewal of Canada's relationship with its Indigenous people. But the inquiry has been plagued by delays, resignations, and allegations of government interference. Many here feel it may be destined to fail. Bernadette Smith's younger sister, Claudette Osborne Tayo, has been missing since 2008. Bernadette started Drag the Red in 2014 to support other families looking for answers after the bodies of several women were found in the Red River. The group uses homemade dragging bars with built-in hooks to search the bottom of the river. They hand over what they find to police and a team of forensic anthropologists.
Every time we go out, we offer tobacco to give thanks for, being able to be out here and do this work, but also to offer prayers to, the families that are missing someone, that don't have answers, or who have been murdered and nobody's been brought to justice.
Why this spot in particular?
So this is the Alexander Docks. So there was 2 young girls that were found here.
In August 2014, the body of a 15-year-old Indigenous girl named Tina Fontaine was found in this river wrapped in plastic. Tina's death was a turning point that opened up a lot of people's eyes to this epidemic and sent shockwaves across the country. For many, it highlighted the failures of the system. In the hours before her death, she encountered the police, hospital staff, and child welfare workers.
Wow. Unreal. Then how did she die, right?
I know she was only 21 at the time, 10 years ago.
She'd been sexually abused when she was 12 and started running away from home. She ended up with a much older man and was exploited and was pushed onto the streets. Claudette wasn't someone who didn't stay in contact with someone daily. Nobody had heard from her in 2 days. So my sister Tina went and she filed a missing persons report, and the police basically said, oh, she's out there somewhere, just give it a few days. So we kept going back to the police station and saying, something's wrong. They didn't take us seriously. They didn't investigate her case for 10 days.
So so there's a prime example. That's what they pulled up. So there's no blood on it, but we pull up clothing all the time. This is pulled up lots of underwear, women's underwear, and people weight bodies down with cement, right? When they found Tina Fontaine's body, she was weighted down. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a strong tug. That's something definitely got caught on here. Oh! Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I have like. So that's a boot.
More cloth, plus their clothing, and a boot.
Looks like there's a what?
Remains inside.
This is heavy work, huh? Heavy duty.
You want me to check for a foot? They're telling me to check for a foot in here.
It's a branch or a rock. Could be bone stuff.
It flashed through my mind that it could be a body that we were trying to pull up, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. Thinking that's what you guys are here to do.
Our first year, there were 7 bodies recovered from this river. So every year we've helped, and I don't even know how many.
Your sister went missing 10 years ago. Every time you come out to this river, do you wonder if you'll recover her body?
Yeah, definitely. That's a reality. When you come across remains and you don't know if they're human or not, or if they're your sister, like, it's an emotional roller coaster because you just never know.
3 other women in Bernadette's family have gone missing or been murdered. Only one case has been solved.
In the same
Should it be
family.
the police doing this?
Absolutely.
That's another thing to look up. How many
Policing
girls
is
in the same family?
We were on the streets, putting up posters, talking to people, going to different organizations, going to different places we went to. You know, we were basically doing a police shop for them, and no family should have to do that.
The Winnipeg police declined to speak with us on camera or give us a statement.
We have the Belltower anti-violence movement, and we exist to build community.
Michael Champagne is an activist who organizes weekly anti-violence rallies in Winnipeg's primarily Indigenous North End neighborhood. A new mural dedicated to missing and murdered women has just been painted in this
beautiful
meeting place.
Nice how we have these beautiful images in our community, but it's frustrating that they have to be memorial images.
I wanted to know why it was necessary to hold weekly anti-violence rallies here.
There was a time when in a year we had over 52 vigils, funerals, hospital room visits, and the same group of people got together, but always centered around the negative things. We need to host weekly anti-violence hears to send a message, not only to the community, but to the people that prey on our community. And our message is that we are united.
Michael grew up in the child welfare system here and says that 1 out of 6 children in this neighborhood are currently in the care of the system. 7% of children across Canada are Indigenous, but they make up nearly half of all foster children in the country. The government cites poverty or lack of adequate food or housing as reasons for separating them from their birth families. What connections do you see between the child welfare system and the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women?
In the child welfare system, often what ends up happening is a devaluing of Indigenous life, especially for Indigenous women and girls. As they age out of care, they turn 18, unequipped with life skills, severed from their biological families or their home communities. They're at risk of homelessness, harmful substance use, sexual exploitation. Part of the reason why we have such difficulties in child welfare today is that many of those children right now are actually children like me of Indian residential school survivors.
From the 1840s to the mid-1990s,
Residential schools, remember?
150,000 Indigenous children were removed from their families and sent to church and government-run Indian residential schools. Their aim was to kill the Indian in the child. By assimilating them into dominant Canadian culture, many children suffered emotional, physical, and sexual abuse while attending these schools.
As we know now, Indian residential schools was a failed experiment that did a lot more harm than it did good. And unfortunately, that history of family separation over so many generations continues to this day with child welfare.
It's 12:30 a.m. here in the North End neighborhood in Winnipeg, and we've joined this midnight medicine walk organized by the community to reach out to women here that are being sexually exploited, to offer them prayers and medicine and let them know that they're being watched after. And also, the march is to send a message to the men who prey on them that they're being watched by the community.
Lauren Chopek is the founder of the walk. She was once a missing Indigenous woman herself. Lauren ran away from home as a teenager.
This is really
and was
unusual
trafficked
and
on the
amazing.
streets, where she narrowly escaped a serial killer.
How did the idea of the Midnight Medicine Walk come about?
Through my own experiences of being exploited, I wanted to do something to acknowledge those people as who they actually really are.
Amazing
Acknowledge
she
their
survived.
spirits, honor their spirits, instead of just walking past them every day or driving past them every day thinking of them as homeless people or as prostitutes, because that's not who they are.
Tell me about some of the interactions you have with these women that you're reaching out to on the streets and what really sticks with you.
They tear up, these women, because they're finally being recognized. And they might not feel like they deserve that's kind of standing ovation that we give them when we stop and we sing for them. Or we offer them as much. They feel like they don't deserve it, but they do. And they're finally being paid attention to.
Is this process really healing for you?
It is really healing for me. Out of all those negative experiences I had as a young girl being sexually exploited, now people recognize me and they respect me for those things, I guess, but like in a different way, because now I turned it into something beautiful, I guess.
As we turned the corner onto the main boulevard, we were told that no one takes this road at night unless they're looking for sex.
What message are you guys sending to the men out there who prey on this vulnerable women?
That we see what's going on and that we don't believe that our people deserve it. I want them to see the community coming together.
Because the police's response has been insufficient, Indigenous activists have been stepping up in various ways to ensure the safety of their community members and streets.
Okay, so 2 groups of 7. Yep. We've got 14, right?
James Fable is the executive director of the Bear Clan Patrol, a community safety patrol that operates in some of Winnipeg's toughest neighborhoods 5 to 6 nights a week.
When we talk about the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls here in this country, do you see your work as trying to put an end to that in a small
That's
way?
exactly why we started. And wait, what happened with Tina Fontaine? I just wasn't prepared to sit around and watch anymore. I had to do something so that I could at least sleep at night and my conscience be clear. And so we started out with 12 volunteers in 2014, and now we have 1,200.
How does that make you feel?
Pretty good.
Tell me a little bit more about the sexual exploitation we see on these streets.
Well, I mean, it's the prostitution here. It was pervasive for a very long time, and there was nobody doing anything about it. It was permitted in this area, and for us here in this community, that's not suitable, right? We have the exploited women, standing up against somebody's fence, and the kids are playing in the yard, and we've got Johns coming. And these guys do not discriminate. They go after anybody and everybody. They don't care if you're 10 years old or if you're 40 years old.
Why hasn't the state or the city done more to crack down on these Johns?
The political will is not there.
Canada's national inquiry
That's crazy.
into missing and murdered Indigenous
It's a
women and
crazy
girls
statement,
is
isn't it?
expected to conclude in April of 2019. The inquiry is examining the systematic causes of violence
Check
against
out the
Indigenous
inquiry.
women and girls and making recommendations for how to keep them safe at a cost of $53.8 million. During our time in Winnipeg, we heard from those who feel the inquiry may
It
not
was
be
a
up to the
national
task.
inquiry.
Our family didn't participate.
So you go
in the
National Inquiry Canada,
We called
missing
for a
women,
national
Indigenous.
action plan. Women are still going missing. They're still being murdered, and there's no really resources or prevention put in place to stop that from happening.
I feel like this inquiry needs to be led by experiential family members that actually know what it's like to lose a loved one, so that we have an appropriate amount of urgency behind the work that we're doing.
Tasha Spillett is an academic and educator who's been following the inquiry.
I don't see that there'll be any outcome in it unless there's real legal teeth from that from that inquiry, we're going to have another inquiry in 50 years, another one in 100 years, another one in 150 years. If we don't understand that at the bottom of this is a really harmful power dynamic in which Indigenous women and girls are situated at the bottom.
We wanted to take these concerns to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, but his office declined our request for an interview. Instead, they directed us to Carolyn Bennett, the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. For months, we reached out to her office for an interview and eventually received a statement that stresses the government's commitment to, in their words, end this national tragedy, and lists the initiatives it's taking to support affected communities and prevent future violence. In the meantime, as Canada's government struggles to repair its relationship with its Indigenous population, the communities here are continuing to search for their missing women while trying to stop the next one from being murdered.
We've made it part of Claudette's legacy to help other families, to do whatever we can to create awareness, to honor her.
Hey everyone, it's Dina. So how much did you know about Canada's epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to check out our next Direct From episode where I travel to British Columbia to report on the fight against the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Make sure to like and share this video and follow our page Direct From.
All right.
It's Canada's secret.
Okay. What do you think about that? It's going around Facebook. It's being shared around Facebook. What do you think about it? Is it helpful? Is it raising the issue? Is it spurring others to get involved? What do you think? This is an example of one of the things that we can do with our cases, right? Like, this is a young girl. She's as young as any one of you. You could be doing this, right? I mean, this is your case that you're doing with this semester, so you could do the same thing. What it takes to get a cameraman to follow you around. Anybody ever done that? Ever filmed something with a cameraman or a camera person? Raise your hands if you've ever done something like that. Nobody has. Really? Easy to do. You can even do it on your phones, right? Activists these days are just doing, live videos these days, yeah? So this is a really, really educational, helpful thing that you can communicate to fellow peers your age to encourage others to get excited about trying to figure out how to help solve something, right? So I'd encourage all of you guys that you've taken on your own cases. Now think about what the next step is, right? So what we've been doing throughout this semester has been learning about the cases, keeping up with the cases, finding out where the cases are headed, right? The next step would be, well, what do we not want to do with that next? Okay, so we're going to work on a writing assignment, our last writing assignment, and that's going to, I'll put the details up on Wednesday. But one of the aspects that we're going to look at is what's next, right? What would be next in following up on your case? What would you do in following up? Okay, and another question, anybody in the class, is anybody planning on continuing studying the topic that you chose for your case? So raise your hand if anybody's going to keep on studying this topic in other classes or in future semesters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. Okay, good. That's like almost half of you, right? So I'd really encourage you to continue. And you'll find that over time, in sticking with these cases, that it will open your eyes into other cases. And you'll be fascinated about where it will take you. And you can let yourself be taken, right? And it can take you into an area of work that you might find enjoyable. So I'd encourage that. Okay, saw this on the 9th. Okay, so it's late. But did you see this one? Yeah, okay. And that's the one that we were talking about last time, right? Okay. So just wanted to make sure that I got that one. This one is a last dance that I really, really like. Another kind of optional, not optional, but another kind of way of raising the voice. I'll play it when we finish our class so that you can hear it as you leave. Okay? All right. So last week we looked at Handbook for Parliamentarians. How many people got through it? How many people got through? One. Really? Okay. Get through it, okay, for the next class. And then I would like you to take a look at this one other handbook, right? So we've got handbooks on how to take the UN DRIP and make use of it, right? This one is a bit different. This one comes from Canada, University of Manitoba, right? And it's going to have sections, and each section they'll treat with this little kind of summary sections. Okay, so you'll get some writing about this, and then you'll get a little summary here, and then we've got some more writing, and then another summary, right? Okay, so and they're gonna address specific rights. Further down, they address land rights. Okay, so take a look at this one. Let me copy and paste it onto Moodle. Okay, I'll just do that right now so that we have it there. And we'll go down to week 13, and I'll add text, right? I don't need to add the parliamentarian one again, right? Because it was already there. Yeah. Reading, okay. Oops. Save and display. And then we'll go, okay, Canadian Rights Handbook, okay? Is that clear? And I'll just make the link so you can just click on it. So I'll go like that. Okay, so, whoa. Okay. Hold on. New page. Okay. Canadian Handbook. Great link. Okay. All right. Save and display. So we've got our previous one. Get through that one. Take a look at this one. Let's just make sure that we've got it there. Yep, there it is. Oh, okay. So you see what I've done. I messed up here. Just go to the Canadian Rights Handbook, okay, for the reading, and then the last handbook was right here. Okay, so we'll take a look at those two and we'll compare. Then there was one other thing that we missed doing, and that was we missed taking a look at this. See if there's one more after that. I think that was the last one. Yeah. Okay, so how many people got to this part of the reading? Great. Nobody else? Great, thank you. Okay, 2 of you, excellent job. The rest of you, shame on you. My grandma used to say that. All right, so please do get to this. And what we want to do here is take a look at this article, First Global Funding Pact Launched to Secure Indigenous Land Rights. And we've got a reference to something right here. I don't think that we've taken a look at this yet, have we? Have we taken, did we take a look at the land facility? I said to look at it, but we didn't go to it, right? Did you take a look at it? Yeah. Yeah, and did you take a look at it? The 10-year facility? Oh, wait, is this right? Hold on. Yes. Wow, they've redone it. Okay, it looks different. Pardon? We're on 13 now. But this was, I found this on, well, this one, I think, this reading about the land facility, yeah, I think that one was from 2 weeks ago. Okay, right. Okay, so if you go to the tenure facility. That looks interesting. Can you see from over there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Panama piece. 1,000,006, strengthening territorial security and organizational capacity of Indigenous people. Institutional strengthening, right? Did we talk about that as a buzz term? I think we did, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. Collective land title Afrodescendientes. So this is similar to Nicaragua in that we want to address this ethnic group as if they're similar to Indigenous people. Do they do this in Panama? I'm not sure. You might find it, you might not. But through the Atlantic coastal area, we have a lot of individuals that were brought in the 14th and 15th centuries, or the 1400s and 1500s, that were brought from Africa, okay? And we have no ability to try to be able to deal with their human rights. We have regular rights for civil servants, right, of any given country. We have indigenous rights, but then we have this whole new category of people that have been brought from Africa, primarily for slavery, and then dumped off and intermixed with the local populations, and no category of classification as to how to help them. You should also know that it's widely accepted that addressing issues for African Americans, those that have histories reaching back to Africa, it's widely known that addressing restitution issues for that population is not happening because of the lack of addressing the same for Indigenous people. Now, let me continue on with that statement because it's a little bit shocking, right? Is it shocking to anybody? Yeah, okay. If we address restitution issues for Native Americans in this country, it will mandate that we address the same for those that have had that history, okay? The history of being brought from another continent for malicious purposes, right? So because of that purpose, or because of that problem, neither side is being addressed because we don't want to deal with either of them, okay? And that's just a selfish issue relating to restitution problems that the country is not ready to deal with, which they should. Okay. All right, so we've got a list of, wow, look at all these numbers. Are you guys looking at these numbers? 1,000,006, 1,000,006, 1,000,009, 1,000,009, almost a million, less, almost a million. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 projects. Around maybe a $15 to $20 million effort. Like if we're talking about what it takes to support those projects, that's just project monies, right? We need staff, we need an office, we need all of the effort for fundraising and everything like that, right? So this is an entity that's kind of brand new, maybe 5 years in the making, right? We've got 10 cases that we're working on. We've got somewhere between a $15 and $20 million budget, right? I hope that they can do what they're proposing. Let's see if we've got, oh, there's a list of their project locations. And then let's see. Let's see what they have for their media. Not a lot. Okay. Timelines. Again, not very much. Wow, they shifted the whole website, so it's not as nice. Impact. Stay informed. Okay, there we go. Land and forest rights of Indigenous people, local communities, making them more secure, and practical approaches implementing land and forest tenure. Right? Oh, we were right. Look at our budget. How about that? Okay. 1.8 million hectares. That's a lot that they're working on, right? Stay informed, okay? Let's see if I can get the resources. See if this has their funding resources. No. Okay. There's one a little bit. This is what I wanted. Okay. So those are our funders, right? Do you know about these funders? Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, that's like USAID for Sweden, okay? They're huge. They're active all over the place. Sweden is very active, although the Dutch are probably the most active. NORAD, anybody know NORAD? No, it's not our military services here now. NORAD is the Norwegian aid agency. So this is Sweden and Norway as states are sponsoring this. Interesting, right? It's like the US government sponsoring something like this. Think about that. That'd be wild, wouldn't it? Okay, and then we have the Ford Foundation. The heck? Do you know about the Ford Foundation? They're at the forefront of indigenous land titling for all of Latin America. Like, they're funding a vast majority of what's going on, right? Also, other smaller groups like, what was the one that Amazon Watch or something like that? That's another one.
Oh,
Rainforest Alliance, right. Rainforest Alliance is a very big organization, but not as much money. But Ford, huge, very involved in funding all of this. The Ford Foundation donated a very large matching grant that was part and parcel to getting a lot of the indigenous titling done in Nicaragua and throughout other areas of Central America. So big things that they've got going on down there. Okay, so that's, I think, the list of things that I wanted us to take a look at. Okay. Now, this week, we have 2 weeks left, right? This week, let's talk about the future of indigenous rights. Next week, I want us to kind of go through a review as to what we've learned and making sense of everything, right? And then do a final kind of review of where your cases are, even if it's like there's been no progress or anything, okay? So that's what we want to do for the next 2 weeks, okay? So, human rights. Looking at a few of the global human rights regimes. We have the UN Commission on Human Rights, formed in 1946. It's interesting to see what started a lot of these declarations, right? And see the time frame of when they were passed and initiated. We started a Human Rights Committee, right? So we have a commission. This is where we report our complaints, right? Then the committee takes a look at the claims. And then we have a commission for human rights that then go out and visit sites, right? This is the overall UN. It's not like the regional OAS, Inter-American Human Rights Commission, right? That would be more of your regional approach. This is the top, right? Okay. 1993. How many people surprised that this was initiated so late? 93. That's when I graduated from college. Where I had 1 more year. Right? Okay. Universal Declaration of International Human Rights, Economic and Social Rights, and Group Rights, right? Here's our primary treaties. Declaration of the Rights of Man, Declaration of the Rights of Child, Rights Against Torture. This one came out when we were talking about Rwanda, right? And the DRIP, of course. Human rights have normative strength but are procedurally weak. What do we mean by normative? This was the case with all of our laws in Nicaragua. We just wrote laws. We said, this is what we want for our laws. These are the things that are important. And then we never did anything to get it on the ground, right? So, same thing with the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Yeah, we got a manual for parliamentarians. Yeah, we've got checklists. Yeah, we've got some ideas about how to take this on the ground. But really, what we've done is we've taken the UN DRIP and we've just stated what we wanted. See if I can find it real fast here for us. Ah, that's easy, right? Okay, so let's say normative. Let's go to number 26. Okay. Article 26 from the UN Draft. Indigenous people have the right to the lands, territories, resources that they've traditionally owned, occupied, otherwise used, or acquired. Right? Okay. Big right. Yeah? Huge right. In fact, so huge that the US not ready to sign this declaration. Right? We'll endorse a couple of articles, but this is difficult. Right? Okay. Let's get to the second part of this article. Indigenous people have the right to own, use, develop, control the lands, territories, resources they possess by reason of traditional ownership. I love how they use this writing. Or traditional occupation or use, as well as those which they've otherwise acquired. States shall give legal recognition and protection to these lands, territories, and resources. Such recognition shall be conducted with due respect to the customs, traditions, land tenure systems of the indigenous peoples concerned. Do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this article? This is my favorite article, so you better like it. Good enough for you? Okay. It's normative because all we did was say, this is what we think should happen. This is what the right should be, right? Procedural would be, indigenous people have the right to own the lands, territories, resources they traditionally owned, occupied, and otherwise used or acquired by the way of filing this, doing that. Okay, they would give you the procedures as to how to accomplish these kinds of rights, okay? These are rights that already exist. That's an interesting thing, right? It's not that we have to declare them. It's not that we have to, as an indigenous group, say, these are our rights. No, the rights are already there, right? Now, how do we take them and put them into use? That's the part that we're missing. The procedures is what we're missing. But the procedures are what we've been talking about all semester. Yeah? They're just not formalized. They're not formalized in law. They're only formalized in the field. She's going to see it in May, right? You tell everybody what you're doing in May?
Geodesign to conserve rainforests, nature, and
What do you do? What are you going to do?
So there's like an ecology aspect, but then also a portion where we will spend time with the indigenous people and use GIS and other like GPS technology to map the land use and other like biodiversity hotspots, and then use GIS to create whatever like project we decide to, and then those are presented like to the like stakeholders and ballot or in the region, and then also to other like partners.
Great, and you're working with the indigenous people directly in this process? Participating with them?
Yeah, it's not a huge aspect of it, but they definitely do play a part, and I'm
good.
Not really sure.
I hope they play a really good part. Yeah. You make sure that they do, right? So that's exciting. And think about that, right? How many other people find that fascinating? I do. How many other people want to go on that May term? I do. Anybody else? Right? I'd highly recommend it. Does she do it every year?
Dan, yeah.
Oh, Dan. It's a gentleman.
That's Dan Klooster and
Dan Klooster. Okay. Does he do it every? Not sure.
He's been doing it often.
Right. Okay. And then we have another professor on campus that's doing indigenous GIS work as well, right? Was it you that sent me that piece?
No, I don't.
Or somebody else that sent me. Okay. Somebody else sent me a piece on something else that's going on. And I'm not sure if that's a May term thing or not. Does anybody else know about that?
It is. It's a May term course.
It's a May term course as well. Okay. Are you going to take it?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So we got two people that are going into the field doing exactly what we're talking about, right? Very cool. I'm stoked. Okay, so you guys can tell, obviously, that this does not have the directions as how to, right? Hence, we need these manuals, and we're coming up with these ideas about how to make these methods more universal, right? Okay, so procedurally weak. This is the same thing that happened to us with the Nicaraguan law. We said we have an autonomy law that respects their autonomy, right? Their ability for self-law and self-rule. And then we had another law about respecting land rights. And we really had to develop the procedures for that in order for that to go forward, because the law just didn't have it, right? Okay. All right. I don't think we've gone through a lot of this, have we? Not so much, huh? We have the European Human Rights Courts. How many people are aware of the European Human Rights Courts? I would assume maybe Europe might have something to say about the Kurds. Maybe? Do they ever? You ever bring them up? I'm not sure. That'd be something to look into, because they do have a lot to say about the Middle East. So oftentimes we hear rulings on the Middle East, which is weird. You know, you would think that that would come from the Middle East and not from here, but that's something that we see fairly frequently. Okay. Well, I just pressed a funny button on my hearing thing and maybe turned off my hearing. Now I can't find the button. All right, well, we'll just ignore it. Okay. So they have what's called the Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. More specific to Europe, they also have their own Court of Human Rights, right? So this is similar to our hemisphere of the Inter-American Human Rights Court. And then they obviously have a commission as well. Now, we have a few things over here. The American Declaration of the Rights and Duties of Man. I believe that we just just a second. American Declaration. We'll see if we have any news on it. No. Okay. Well, there's some word that we're maybe going to redo it. Okay. Because it's just old and not as relevant as it should be. Okay. So we've been talking about the American Declaration and doing some work on it. It is using the camera and the microphone, so we're doing good. Okay. Then we have the American Conversation about Human Rights, where we just have this discussion about human rights and didn't really mandate anything. We have a protocol of San Salvador that had a bit to do with what went on in El Salvador, right? 10 years of civil war. Right? And then we developed the Inter-American Human Rights Court. Oh, I was 8. I was 8 years old when we decided, no, it's about time, right? This sounds horrible to me. Should have been like in the 50s or something, right? I don't know. Inter-American Commission of Human Rights then was formed after that, right? Other regions, African Charter and Commission on Human Rights, Human and People's Rights. That's getting a little bit more news as of late. Yes?
Have you heard anything about China's new social credit system?
Social credit system.
Yeah, it was technically brought up in like 2014, but they're just starting to implement it, where people are literally getting like a social like credit score. And so if you do like enough like bad things, like parking tickets or stuff like that, you like have your like kind of rights stripped away, where you can't like buy certain plane tickets or train tickets, can't get into first class. They're also implementing facial sentiment recognition in classrooms in China, which is terrifying.
Facial sentiment recognition.
Yeah, it's literally like monitoring how children are like reacting to information. Like doing it all of that. So it's just like,
Wow, this is alarming to me. Okay, thank you for this. I'll look into it.
yeah.
I haven't heard anything about this. When did it start to be?
Well, they talked about it in
discussed?
2014, but it's supposed to be implemented in 2020, but they're starting like right now. This was like 2 days ago.
And where did it come out of? What article or what newspaper? It'd be interesting to find.
I understand. I don't know.
Huh.
But you can just Google it.
Yeah.
That just seems like a direct violation of that.
Wired, maybe. ranking citizens with social credit system. Wow, this is really alarming. I've never heard of this. Anybody else heard of this? Yes? Where'd you hear about it? Oh, wow. And these two are the only ones that have heard of this. Nobody else have heard. Okay. All right. That's alarming. Thank you for bringing that up. I'll look into it. Right? Okay. Let's see. We have the Permanent Arab Commission on Human Rights, African Charter, Arab Charter. None of the Arab court systems have been really that active. In fact, it's not up here. There's Arab Human Rights Court. So that is specifically geared towards Sharia, including other aspects of human rights. So I'm not sure how it breaches across other communities and other populations because it's real specific to Arab law and Arab culture. But we might see more of them. They were developed, the court was developed in 2014. So just when those things were coming on, we were starting our first Arab human rights court. So, and it would be what we called a paper court, or maybe I've mentioned things called paper parks before, right? Where we just have something on paper. That's what we've seen with the Arab Human Rights Court. It's been primarily a paper court. But in the last maybe 3 years, millions and millions of dollars are being poured into it. Not sure why, not sure what they're up to, but they've got something that they're getting going. So that'll be interesting to watch and see what they do. We've had a number of human rights issues brought up recently in the last maybe year as it relates to the Arab culture, right? Do you remember any of these? Big, huge advancement for one population in Arab. There you go. Women driving, right? That was a big thing. Okay. So I'm not sure what other kinds of social changes we'll see in those cultures. Then we have single issue regimes. Okay. The ILO, International Labor Organization, is about workers, labor, right? But strangely enough, we can use our association with those entities to enter into other kinds of areas. For example, we have a number of unions that are being developed by the Palestinian Authority that are related to workers. And we're thinking that the unions, which they've been talking about using as a way to get into the ILO, will be used as a way to get some assistance from the ILO, okay? So you can start a union and then join this kind of an entity as that kind of a background, right? Then we have racial discrimination, right? A whole section of the UN dedicated to that. Torture, obviously avoiding it, right? And getting it to stop happening. Women's rights, 1947, laid on the scene. ECOSOC is economics and social projects out of the UN. ECOSOC is what a lot of majority of our projects follow under the UN. Huge aspect of the UN's work. Children, genocide, minorities. I think we also have one that's a human rights issue. Let's see if I can pull it up. UN human rights child soldiers. If we can find this, it might be really interesting to take a look at. International optional protocol. No. Well, I think that's as close as we go. Okay, let's see what they give us. Okay, newly appointed special representative. Great. Okay, so we have now, and it's been developing for the past maybe 7 years. Do you guys remember CONI, the Coney 2012, I think it was. Yeah, okay. So that was the first time that we really saw much on the international scene about children soldiers. We've known about children soldiers, obviously. I mean, we've even had children in our own armies, right? So we as the United States have also participated in this. Yes?
Wait, I knew a path.
Still at large. I mean, like, is anybody cool with this? This is like the worst case ever.
I was just talking about I think it lost a lot of like
The movement.
yeah,
Lost
because
steam.
he I think had a manic break at one point and like, ran around the streets naked, and after that everything kind of stopped.
But he's never been captured officially, right?
Oh, I was talking about the guy who like started the Coney.
Oh, the guy that started the thing.
Yeah, not that guy.
The
No,
video.
he's-
Not
he's still
Coney
at large.
himself. Yeah, Coney himself is still at large. So, but the video might have kind of went into left field. All right. Well, I thought it was good to begin with, but it did kick off this, right? So we were watching that film earlier about missing women, 15 minutes, really pointed. I don't know about you, but you know, it's real close to tears for me in watching this. We've got another film, Coney 2012. Never mind what happened to the director after he did it, right? And look. So what is the power of audio visuals? Huge. It's about capturing an audience. And when you've captured an audience, you could capture one of the bigger audiences listening from those human rights commissions, right? And that's what happened here. And so 7 years ago, this became an idea to incorporate into the rights of the child. But now, anytime you hear of a kid that's involved in any kind of warfare, any kind of whatsoever, and you've got a special representative, rapporteur, right? It's just like the Indigenous people. We now have a rapporteur. We can call the rapporteur. All you need is to be an NGO or to get an NGO to do it for you, right? Or be a government, Indigenous or nation state. So now we have somebody that's listening. Very wonderful that we can have projects raising the voice or raising awareness and then do something to deal with it, right? I mean, think about it. Only since the late 40s have we been doing this. You're in the generation of where we fight for human rights. You're the generation that sees this. We've been building up all this legislation. We've been doing all the footwork on how to get this done on the ground. And you're the beneficiaries of learning all this wonderful knowledge of what people have done before you. And now with all the legal precedents of court cases and all of these declarations and all of these mechanisms, boy, you guys are going to see a lot happen in your lifetime, I tell you. Because we've got it all set up and we're just getting started, right? 10 years ago, we passed the Declaration of Indigenous Rights. And we're just getting started with that too, right? So it's going to be fun to see what happens when these things hit the ground running. All right. Okay, let's see. Where do I want to go with this? Have we talked about cultural relativism at all in this class? No. Okay. We should, though. Right? So when I first started studying human rights, I got pissed. I got pissed because somebody was talking about it and they said, you know, human rights are Western. And I listened and I was like, oh, come on. That's like so hegemonic, right? For us to say, well, they're Western, right? I've changed a little bit of my thinking. I don't want to say that they're Western, but I'm not going to say that they're universal, right? And it's interesting that we had that case with the United States. I don't know if it's still up there. The United States saying, hey, actually, female circumcision is legal. Wow. Okay, so let's take that as a talking point for this, right? Under the international legal structure, international human rights law says violence against children is against their human rights. Declaration of the Rights of the Child. My computer's going to stop. Hold on. Declaration of the Rights of the Child says we're not going to have children under the age of 12 in areas where they have violence. So according to international law, female circumcision would be considered illegal, right? WHO, they concur. WHO, World Health Organization, says this is against the human rights of girls. And then we have some cultures that say, well, some girls want it, some elders want it, some males want it. They say it's a part of the culture, and you ought to respect that. Damn it, right? And look, we've got a law that says doctors, even performing it in the United States, ought not be held accountable, right? So we have this clash of cultures in this case. And yet, looking at international law, if we're going to just go with international law, what we have, laws that we do have, those laws will tell us that female circumcision is against the rights of the child. Right? So when we look at human rights, we necessarily have to recognize the fact that they are not universal. No. In fact, they don't incorporate cultural relativism, do they? Not specifically. If there are cases that are different from the norm, we tend to exclude them. We call it moral universality, but it might not be specifically just that, right? So, when it comes to talking about cultural relativism, we have maybe radical cultural relativism, radical universalism, different kinds of strengths of cultural relativism, but essentially when we're talking about human rights law, cultural relativism isn't a part of our conversation. It's interesting that we have an Arab court that might have a focus on Sharia, because that might be their opportunity to have that respected in that regional area. But right above them, on the international level, is going to be the UN, and the UN is still going to say the same thing, right? So we still have this issue about human rights and the rule of law and issues of tolerance of other cultures and other rights, right? Here's your link about the Sharia cases in the UK, by example, right? Now it's on our shores as well. Maybe it's been here for a while, I don't know. Right? And then we have the experience of trying to maintain our cultural laws in another culture, right? So, issue about our human rights law, some might call it hegemonic, right? Some might call it ethnocentric. But for lack of anything else, this is what we got, right? Okay, so in terms of the United Nations role nowadays, we've got some interesting things happening. We are diffusing and resolving ethnic tensions all over the place. What happened last week? We went to the UN. Do you know? We went to the UN and we had measures stated about what we feel about things, right? We introduced resolutions when the country's doing something we don't like. We have a resolution that, we're going to investigate, right? So we went to the UN last week. We had a bunch of countries there. We introduced resolutions, voted on resolutions. Some got passed, some did not. How many people knew that this was going on last week? A little bit in the news, right? What went on in Syria last week? Well, we were all enjoying our Thanksgiving turkeys, or some of us were enjoying times together. What happened in Syria? Do you know? What happens if I just type Syria? Oops, I gotta spell it right. How about that one? See that one? Gas, chloride gas dumped on a group of people, I think somewhere between 100 and 200 people. Were you aware? No. Strangely enough, we did not introduce a resolution against Syria. Are you surprised by this? Back in 2014, we introduced something that said, hey, we got to investigate what's going on there. We need a resolution to investigate because what's going on is not good. That's the last resolution that we had on there. All that we're doing now is checking up on that past resolution. So things are going down and they're not getting called. They're not getting brought to attention. So you should know that while we have this system, it's also highly politicized. I am certain there's a political reason why we didn't bring it up. But when we look at what was going on at the very moment that we were going in to make motions and resolutions, this would be absurd, right? Finding out just right then and there that they were getting dumped on with chemicals. And yet we still didn't do anything to make that stop. I thought that the UN was the #1 place where we could go to do that. And Syria, boy, talk about none better of a case than needs to happen. So we still have some holes, right? Got a good system, lacking some procedures. We can fill in those kinds of holes, but we're still lacking some political holes, and we still got some issues to deal with. Not ideal, but it's our system, and it's the only one we got, right? So, diffusing conflict, World Court, we have the Criminal Justice Court, right, and then the ICC, Crimes Against Humanity, right? We've got the, we had a new gentleman that was just arrested. Let me see if I can find this. ICC arrest. Oh, I can't believe. Arrested. News. Yeah, I think he got arrested. I think it was this dude that got arrested. Gaddafi's son. What? Okay. So the other possibilities that we have are when people can issue warrants for arrest out of the ICC, which is astounding, right? What would happen if we had a politician that did something terrible? Here we got an example, right? Did something terrible, arrested. We got a case going on in the ICC, right? How do we arrest them? Maybe by the host country. What if the host country doesn't want to help you? Oh, if they ever go traveling, guess what happens? It's for real. This is what happens if you have a politician that's been watched, right, by a criminal court, and if they start to travel anywhere in the world, going through any of the international airports, that's where they catch them, and they bring them in, and they arrest them. So you'll find some politicians are even too afraid to travel if they've been in scenarios that are questionable, right? All right, Nuremberg trials were something that were held with the assistance of the United Nations. That was really one of the first series of trials that we've ever had, followed by special tribunals based on genocidal issues. Okay. All right, I think that's all I have for you today. Please take a look at both of those manuals and see what might be helpful, what's not helpful, what's missing with those two pieces. All right, and then check up on your cases again. Okay, and let's see. Your case was becoming more specific about the couple, right? Did you get any more news about them?
Yeah, so
That hit big news.
There's a,
I can have you give us an update on Wednesday.
now it's more than 90 Indigenous women in the Western Province of.
90?
Ultimate lawyers to join the lawsuit over forced sterilization.
There's a class action suit now. Holy camole. 90 women. And that's not, is that to include the, like men as well? They did it to the men as well? Or it was just
No, I think it's women during their pregnancy when.
Yeah.
When
after
the
birth?
process.
Yeah, and then they get sterilized after.
And,
I've heard of that happening. I know a couple of people that have that happen.
yeah, they said since Canada has universal health care, that, this falls under the government actions.
So that'll be a huge case. And I wonder if they'll be able to resolve it in Canada, or if it's gonna go beyond Canada. I bet it's gonna go beyond Canada, because Trudeau does not seem like he's dealing with all of the issues. All right, okay, great, thank you. We'll see you on Wednesday.